And Shabbat Shalom, greetings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad. It is a hot summer day here in Oregon, and we are on the count towards the full feasts. So without further ado, go to TorahToTheTribes.com/connect, scroll down to the feasts tab and click on there and register for Sukkot, because we'd love to visit with you and spend some time at the Oregon coast. Sukkot at Sukkot this year, October 4th through the 9th. You can register there. And please do consider donating to this ministry, subscribing to the channel, giving some thumbs up, because we really appreciate your support. Thank you, all of you that do. And if you don't, please pray about that and consider donating and supporting the ministry here, Torah to the Tribes. We are in Isaiah, the 5th Hebrew Gospel, and today we're in chapter 21. And what is just so remarkable to me, the more and more as I plow through this book, is Isaiah, Yeshayahu, the prophet of prophets. And today really just is encouraging to me in such a world of unbelief, where people are trampling over everything that we hold so dear in our faith, to really see the power of our faith, the validity and strength of Yahweh's enduring word. Today, you're going to see Isaiah prophesy and speak into the future and how it comes to pass with such accuracy, such certainty, witnessed by two other prophets, Jeremiah and Daniel, to the very day, to the very hour, to the very minute in accuracy. And if that doesn't encourage you to pick up your word and to realize that it is alive and true, then I don't know. This teaching, this chapter is so encouraging to me. Now, what happens in chapter 21, turn there. Yahweh appoints a watchman to warn of Babylon's imminent fall at the hands of the Assyrian alliance. This is prophecy. It's also history. Let's touch on the historical background before I go all apocalyptic on you. Historically, and for us, of course, prophetically, but we are going to witness, I believe, the allies of the king of the north, known as the end-time Assyrian, destroy mystery Babylon in a day, in an hour, for sure and for certain. That's what it hearkens to prophetically. The burden of the desert of the sea. As whirlwinds in the south pass through, so it comes from the desert, from an awesome land. A grievous vision is declared to me. The treacherous dealer deals treacherously, and the plunderer spoils. Go up, O Eliam, besiege it, O Media. All the sighing of it I will make cease. So at this point in the history, Babylon was nothing more than a small, unimportant, unthreatening country. It was nothing. It was nothing in the days of Isaiah. It was under the control of Ashur. It was like a little outpost, little Bedouin outpost. Now, back in the days of Abraham, yes, there was ancient Babylonia some 1,500 years earlier during Abraham's lifetime, and we read about that for sure. But that empire had long been relegated to history. The Babylon about which our prophet Yeshayahu, Isaiah, prophesied was the Neo-Babylonian Empire, which rose as a world power 66 years after Isaiah's death. And how long did the empire last for? Anybody? 70 years. That's it. It hadn't even come into existence yet. And Isaiah is going to pinpoint a very day, a very hour, a very minute of its demise. Now, with their rise to power, the Babylonians, they had conquered the formerly dominant Assyrians, who had become weakened after the miraculous destruction of their army in one night. And we read about that in the earlier chapters of Yeshayahu, that is spoken of and given more history in 2 Kings, Melachim Bet, chapter 19 and chapters 24. Remember, the Assyrians coming down, Sancheriv, and then within one whole night, their army was decimated. Well, that really weakened Assyria, which enabled Babylon then to grow and conquer them, because that happened with their sights set on Jerusalem. Yahweh, through a miracle, destroyed their army in a night. So the great superpower then of the Neo-Babylonian Empire lasted only 70 years. Isaiah prophesies this in Isaiah chapter 29, verse 10. This prophecy, though, of Jeremiah, it was well known to the Babylonians. It was rumored amongst them in their culture, oh, you'll only last for 70 years. You only have a set time. And it was something that was always in the back of the minds of the Babylonians. It was well known and they feared it. Now, towards the end of the 70-year period, the Babylonians, they had ominous signs that the prophecy would be fulfilled. And one was the rise of two small kingdoms, Media and Persia. Would this spell their demise? Would this bring forward the prophecy of Jeremiah, that we would only exist for 70 years? Oh my goodness, look, the Medes and the Persians are rising up. What could happen to us? So this was in the back of their mind. Now this now brings us to Daniel chapter 5. Daniel chapter 5. And it's amazing because you can see now these historical prophetic connections. Now, you may remember the story. Belshazzar was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. And he waged a great war against the Medes and the Persians. And as he was under this erroneous impression that he had actually defeated his arch enemies. That's the setting of Daniel chapter 5, which has been prophesied in this chapter by Isaiah to the very day, to the very hour, to the very minute. Also witnessed by Daniel in the 5th chapter and witnessed by Jeremiah in the 29th chapter, the 10th verse. So, the historical setting. Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar. He believes that he's defeated the Medes and the Persians. He has, of course, grown up with this weight of this 70-year existence, and he believes, no, the time has passed. I've defeated them. The God of Israel, nothing. The prophet Jeremiah, nothing. It didn't come to pass. I am triumphant. Pride. So what does he do? He throws a feast in celebration of his victory. And then he decides, you know what? I'm going to thumb my nose at the God of Israel. I'm going to thumb my nose at the prophecy because it was a bunch of nonsense. It never did come to pass. I can't believe we've lived under the threat of this 70-year existence. So in his celebratory victory, even more special to Belshazzar was that according to his reckoning, it coincided this 70-year limit with Nebuchadnezzar's invasion upon Jerusalem. And it had passed. But he got the prophecy wrong. Just as so many evangelical Christians have got the prophecy wrong. Oh, it was the invention of the state of Israel in 1948, and they do all of their crazy timelines. Oh, the pre-tribulation rapture is coming. And the prophecies are wrong. And that causes grievous error and judgment. So Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, he had waged a great war against the Medes and Persians, and he came under this erroneous impression that he had actually defeated his arch enemies. His feast, as recorded in Daniel 5, was his victory celebration. And even more special to Belshazzar was that according to his reckoning, it coincided with the expiration of the 70-year limit which Jeremiah had set for the Babylonian Empire. And with this victory, Belshazzar thought, well, Jeremiah and his Jewish God, well, they've been proved wrong. They've been proved wrong. Because the Babylonian Empire was very much alive, well, and thriving under Belshazzar's reign. So in mocking celebration against the Most High and against his prophet Jeremiah and their failed prediction, so he thought, what did he do? He ordered the holy vessels from the temple in Jerusalem, which his grandfather Nebuchadnezzar had captured, to be brought before him. And he used them and disgraced them before men and women alike in a drunken orgy, to make this feast into some kind of bacchanalian debauchery. It was a grievous affront to the Most High. But there was a problem. Error begets error. He miscalculated. He miscalculated the 70 years because he was under the misconception that this period began with the ascension of Nebuchadnezzar to the throne. But it actually began, the 70-year period, with the Babylonian exile of the kingdom of Jehoiakim. 2 Kings chapter 24, verse 14. And that was 11 years before Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the temple. That's the reality of the setting and the accuracy of Isaiah's prophecy here in chapter 21. And when you make those connections, it is so powerful that the prophet could be the prophet of prophets. His accuracy is absolutely down to the minute. Down to the minute. The burden of the desert of the sea, as whirlwinds in the south pass through, so it comes from the desert, from an awesome land. A grievous vision is declared to me. The treacherous dealer deals treacherously, and the plunderer spoils. Go up, O Eliam, besiege it, O Media. All the sighing of it I will make cease. Therefore are my loins filled with pain. Pains have taken hold upon me as the pains of a woman in labor. I was bowed down at the hearing of it. I was dismayed at the seeing of it. So we have the contraction pains here. It's interesting, the Hebrew word here is tasir, as in a hinge on like a door. In fact, in Proverbs chapter 26, verse 14, it is written, as the door turneth upon its hinges, the Hebrew word there, tesir, so doth the slothful upon his bed. So the word for contraction pains is hinges. Why? You get it. Why? Can also mean a physical and mental pressure. It's telling you something. It's meaning, it's like the physique of a childbearing woman. Think about it. The childbearing woman with her doors and hinges. Got your doors and hinges down there, swinging open. Swinging open those doors and hinges. It's the entrance of a house, right? The woman is the house that builds up the family. The first letter in the scriptures is a bet, right? Bereshit. Because it's always been about the women building up our house of faith. It's what our daughters do. It's what our mothers do. It's the matriarchs. Because we're to bring forth a house. Swinging those doors and hinges, ladies. Swinging those doors and hinges. As the door turneth upon his hinges, so does the slothful upon his bed. It's the entrance of the house with the doors and hinges. And in childbirth, the womb and the birth canal open and close. I mean, it's so literal, isn't it? As if on hinges. So you could actually, if you wanted to brave it, men, you could inquire of your wife after the, traditional 40 or 80 days. Could go, hello, darling. How are your doors and hinges doing down there? Swinging open, swinging closed, Just inquiring, just an inquiry. Just checking on the doors and hinges, Anyway, I might try that, see how that works for me at home. Well, never know. Well, anyway, Yahweh's day of judgment mercifully ends, thank goodness. And it ends what? The Babylonians' oppressive civilization that ushers in, for us, the millennium. And for Israel, a shalom. So now let's think about prophecy with Mystery Babylon. And let's talk about what I believe is going to be the great de-pegging. The great de-pegging. I think we're in the midst of it now. I'm not going to time and date set, but just for kicks and giggles, I'll call out July 4th, 2024. I'm not date setting. I'm just pulling that date out, and I'll tell you why. I believe, it's just my opinion. I'm not saying thus saith the Lord. It's just my opinion. And my opinion could stink as far as you're concerned. That's fine, but I'm still entitled to my own bloody opinions. And it's my opinion that Mystery Babylon is the Vatican, Washington, D.C., and the City of London. It's commercial, it's political, and it is religious. And it is an alliance that oversees the worldwide bankruptcy and emergency war powers act, specifically in this country, that is also in operation in most countries that have a constitution and are contracting with the International Monetary Fund. Because those countries are tied or pegged, better, they are pegged to United States dollar debt instruments. They're notes. It's not money. They are United States dollar debt instruments, and they are pegged to it. So I believe we are going to see a de-pegging. And what is it going to look like? I believe it's going to be an Assyrian alliance of nations will peg their currency to something other than the US dollar debt instruments. And they will hoard the world's natural resources to implode all those countries tied to Mystery Babylon and pegged to the US dollar debt instruments. It's the great de-pegging. Now, verse 4, And this is what's so inspiring, as I've said. It's a 136-year vision and prophecy into the future. Just think about that. Isaiah is prophesying 136 years into the future. And his prophecy is so accurate to the day, to the hour, to the minute. That's how great a prophet he is, and why he's held in so high esteem by the sages and all other prophets, and especially why, of course, the prophet of prophets, the prophet, Yahushua himself, spoke so highly, and why Isaiah, Yeshayahu, is quoted more than any other prophet in the Brit Hadashah, because of his accuracy. 134 years into the future. 66 years before Babylon even comes into existence. And he's just nailing it. Look at verse 4. Here it is. 136-year vision. Catch it if you can. My heart panted. Fear overwhelmed me. The night of my pleasure has he turned into fear for me. Who's speaking? Belshazzar. Those are the words of Belshazzar. 136 years into the future. He's speaking the very words of Belshazzar. My heart panted, fear overwhelmed me. The night of my debauchery, of my pleasure, of my drunken orgy, he has turned into fear of me. Belshazzar, in Daniel chapter 5, suddenly became aware of a human hand writing on the wall of his palace. And he became terrified and he began to tremble. Daniel chapter 5, verse 5 describes it as follows. At that moment, the fingers of a man's hand appeared and wrote opposite the lampstand on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote. Then the king's face paled. His mind became terrified. His bones became disjointed and his knees knocked against each other. Oh, I got the Ruach HaKodesh, Holy Spirit goosebumps right there. And I've had them like multiple times this week. I'm just like, this is the fear of Yahweh. This is the fear. I mean, I fear Yahweh, the accuracy of this. I mean, this inspires me. My Elohim, who is mighty to save. Mighty to save. Now, unable to, of course, read the writing because it was encrypted, Belshazzar was advised to call upon who? Daniel the prophet, who easily recognized the encrypted words as he counted. He, Yahweh, counted what? What did he count? He counted the 70 years. He counted the 70 years and they had come to an end. When? Right that minute. The years of the Babylonian Empire have ended. Thus saith Yahweh. Thus saith prophet Jeremiah. Thus saith the prophet Isaiah. And thus saith Yahweh's hand on the wall. He counted. Next word. He weighed. He placed you on a scale. He placed you on his scale of justice, and you were found wanting, Belshazzar. You have been pronounced guilty, broken. Same word as Persian. Your empire is broken, and it has been given to Persia, Media. That evening of debauchery had turned absolutely terrifying and would be the last night of Belshazzar's life. And it turned in an instant, didn't it? The chapter in Daniel ends with, on that night, Belshazzar, king of Chaldea, was killed. This ended, brethren, the Babylonian Empire after 70 years, just as Isaiah, just as Jeremiah prophesied. To the very day, to the very hour, to the very minute. Wow. I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it? Prepare the shulchan, the table. Watch in the watchtower. We're on verse 5. We're back in Isaiah. Sorry. But I've been camping out on that all week, and just the ramifications and how that affects my faith. And is my faith really as devout as I think it is? And do I really believe this word and the power? Oh, of course I believe the Bible. But do you really? I mean, am I just arbitrarily reading in my morning devotions? Or do you realize, Matthew, what you are reading? This is what I've been really... Because I don't want to be a Belshazzar, do you? Oh, haughty and prideful, and then all of a sudden, in a minute. Prepare the table, watch in the watchtower, eat and drink, arise, you rulers, and anoint the shield. They would anoint the shield, they would be leather shields, and they'd wet the leather shields, they'd oil the leather shields, because then when the enemy fired their arrows, Satan, Ephesians 6, those fiery darts, it would extinguish the fire. Ephesians 6, so we better go out with those shields anointed and moist and dripping with what? The Ruach HaKodesh and the word of Yahweh. Before we go out, Ephesians 6, we better put on the armor of Elohim, because we are up against devils and men. And reptilians. Devils and men combined. It's a foreign seed of Satan. Genesis 6. The watchers. Nephalim, fallen ones, from the Hebrew word nafal, to fall. But we are to be watchmen over the watchers. Watchmen who report what they see or don't see and hear and report it. But it implies that there are other kinds of watchmen there. Watchmen that are blind and unawares. Too many pastors. Watchmen that are blind and unawares, taking benefits and privileges left, right, and center from the man, from the government. Yeah, they're watchmen, but they're blind and unawares. You don't want to be like that. We are prophets, brethren. We are prophets because, brethren, the term watchman designates a prophet. Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 6, it is written, "For there shall be a day that the watchman upon the mount of Ephraim shall cry, arise, and say, let us go up to Zion, up unto the house of our Elohim." Ezekiel tells us that the watchmen are the prophets. In Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 17, it is written, "Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore hear the word of my mouth and give them warning for me." We're watchmen. We're to call this word out even if they don't like it. Even if they mock you. Belshazzar mocked the Most High. He mocked Jeremiah the prophet. That's on them. The Bible speaks of a Gog and Magog alliance. It's noteworthy that the United States has currently decided to make an alliance with a bunch of nations against a northern nation and has already seized that northern nation's assets that were pegged to the US dollar. Now that nation, Russia, is now aligning with other nations, another alliance, China, that is also seeking to unpeg from the US dollar. Now, if the Saudis and an Arab League joins that northern alliance, you could very well see this prophecy unfold in an hour, in a day, reflected in the unpegging from the US dollar and the absolute collapse of the New York Stock Exchange. This attack on Babylon will catch the wicked, just like Belshazzar, unawares. When people are preparing their tables, decking them with candlesticks, and eating and drinking. And what time of year do you expect this to be? July 4th? Could it be 2024? Well, why? How do I get that? Because the Bible tells us it's going to be in the summer. Isaiah chapter 16 verse 9, for the shouting for thy summer fruits. Isaiah chapter 18 verse 4 tells us it's going to be in the summer. Like a clear heat upon herbs, and like a cloud of dew in the heat of harvest. Isaiah chapter 22 verse 13 and chapter 28 verse 1 tell us it's going to be in summer. It predicts it'll happen in early summer, perhaps during a national holiday when the banks are closed, just like they were in 1933, because it's a depegging. It's the great depegging. Now, candlesticks could very much well be fireworks, couldn't they? So is it possible, Matthew, that it could be a future July 4th weekend? I think so. That's my opinion, and I'm entitled to it upon my reading of the inscription in the scriptures. So there you have it. Put that one in your back pocket and smoke it. Right? Verse 7. And he saw a Merkavah, a chariot with a couple of horsemen. A Merkavah, a chariot of donkeys. And a Merkavah, a chariot of camels. And he listened attentively, very carefully. And if I saw that vision, I'd be like, what's up with those couple of fools? What, we got a chariot full of camels and a chariot of donkeys? And I've seen this very thing in the Middle East myself. One time, when I was a young man, I was out in the deserts in Egypt, outside of Cairo. I mean, and if you've ever been out there, this is absolutely remarkable. You know, you can be on a bus, you can be traveling through the desert for 8-9 hours. Nothing but just sand dunes and sand dunes. And all of a sudden you go over the top of one sand dune and all of a sudden, poof, there's Cairo. It's in the middle of the desert. Depending on, you know, what direction you're coming from. I was coming from the Red Sea. And then you go outside the other side of Cairo and all of a sudden, poof, desert. Sand dunes upon sand dunes and then pyramids. So I'm out there amongst these sand dunes, pretty thirsty, as you would be. And all of a sudden I hear this crazy sound of this donkey, a group of donkeys, just like as if they're being tortured. And all of a sudden, over the top of a sand dune comes a chariot, a Coca-Cola chariot, being headed by a couple of donkeys and a mad Bedouin whipping and beating them. And he's got like a homemade refrigerated chariot full of Fanta and Coca-Cola in the middle of the desert. It's great. You know, so get myself an orange Fanta, as you would, and off we go. You know, a couple of hours later, we're somewhere else in the desert, and you hear another sound. Sounds like somebody strangling a camel. And there's another Bedouin comes over the top of a sand dune with a Coca-Cola or a Fanta chariot run by camels. And, of course, whipping the camels. And, so, you know, they're mad. They're madmen. What's wrong with a horse? What's wrong with a good horse? Well, here's the prophecy. You see, the vision of the two riders of this chariot, they're not being pulled by battle horses. They're being pulled by camels and donkeys, typical Bedouins. But by a donkey and a camel, you say a donkey and a camel, it could be an allegory. It's possible. What would that imply? Well, if it was a horse, that would be pretty rapid, wouldn't it? Good steed. But a camel and a donkey? They're not very fast. I mean, racing camels is one thing, but not when you're trying to pull a Fanta chariot or a Coca-Cola chariot, or in this instance, just a regular chariot. So what does that tell you when you've got a camel and a donkey pulling a chariot? To me, that would say a very, very, very slow destruction. That's what it implies. Yes, there is going to be a destruction of the Babylonian Empire, their alliance. But it's going to be an allegory here for a slow destruction of that very empire. And how would it happen? Slowly, by Media and Persia. Now, had the vision shown battle horses pulling the chariot, it would have signaled what? A very quick destruction of the empire. That's one interpretation. Another possible interpretation of the riders is that they symbolize two kings who would rule the empire immediately following Babylon's collapse. And who were those two kings? One was Darius the Mede, who was the king of the Median Persian Empire and alliance. He was a donkey, though, wasn't he? He didn't last that long. His reign was only a year. And he was followed by the real power in the alliance, who was who? The world-conquering Koresh of Persia. And it was Koresh who issued the proclamation to his world empire, encouraging the Jews to return back to the promised land and rebuild the temple. Ezra chapter 1 records that. Interesting. So these are kind of the thoughts I'm having as I'm reading through the scripture. I'm thinking of Fanta, and I must have been thirsty when I was thinking about this, right? I'm sure I was. Verse 8. And he cried, "A lion, my master! I stand continually upon the watchtower in the daytime, and I am set in my post every night. And see, here comes the Merkava, the chariot of men, with a couple of horsemen." And he answered and he said, Babylon is fallen, it is fallen, and all the graven images of her Elohim he has broken to the ground. O my threshing and the grain of my floor, that which I have heard from Yahweh Sevot, the Elohim of Israel, have I declared unto you. So the Babylonians, who would be thoroughly threshed by the Medes and the Persians, and they would be reduced to nothing but kernels strewn over a threshing floor. They became nothing but Yahweh's threshed grain. That's what's going to happen with the de-pegging from the United States dollar. They're going to be nothing but Yahweh's threshed grain. Nothing. This is the prophet's last warning, and it is reserved for Yahweh's elect. We have to attune to his word. We have to attune to his Holy Spirit, his Ruach HaKodesh, to be able to be those very watchman prophets to which we are disciplined to be. We're to be his disciplined ones. Isaiah says in the 8th chapter and the 16th verse, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciplined ones. In Revelation chapter 18 verse 4 it is written, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, and ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not her plagues. That's why I keep banging on about coming out of her, changing the way you live. We don't have the excuse of the former generation. This is the generation that we're called to come out of her, my people. You don't want to be pegged to the US dollar. You don't want to be tied in to Mystery Babylon through any invisible contracts and adhesion contracts. You just don't. So think about it now. This is the generation. Isaiah 52 verse 11 says, depart ye, get ye out from thence. Don't even touch anything unclean. Their whole system is unclean. It is contaminated from the very, very dollars that you touch to the very contracts that you're all bound by. You don't even want to touch their unclean stuff. Go ye out of the midst of her. Be clean, my people. Be clean and be the bearing vessels of Yahweh. Don't be betwixt two opinions. If you're going to serve the man, Mystery Babylon and all of that, then serve it. But if you're going to serve Yahweh, then start to make preparation for your exodus. It's the greatest exodus that is ever going to come upon the face of this earth. And we are getting ready for the great de-pegging. For ye shall not go out with haste, nor go by flight. For Yahweh will go before you, and the Elohim of Israel will be your reward. That's what Isaiah tells us in the 52nd chapter, in the 11th and 12th verse. It's time for us to repent, to make teshuvah. By repenting and coming back, then they would know for themselves that the morning, the millennial age is drawing near. I feel it. But the day of Yahweh's judgment hasn't yet served its purpose. Look at verse 11. The burden of Duma. He calls out to me out of Seir. Watchman, how much of the night? Watchman, how much of the night? How much more? Have you ever done that? I mean, it happens to me way too much nowadays. How much more of the night? I'm ready to get up and get going here. Oh, it's only 2 o'clock. Oh, it's only 4 o'clock. Oh, it's 5. Oh, I may as well just get up. At this point, I'm just watching the clock. The watchman said, morning came and also the night. If you will inquire, and come again. Having concluded the prophecy predicted by Jeremiah, the 70 years which was realized, Isaiah now prophesies about the next exile. He's prophesying about the next exile. The first exile, that was a short night. It was a short night. It was only 70 years. It's now concluded to the very day, to the very hour, to the very minute. But the next exile is a long night, brethren. It's been over 2,000 years. It is a long night. It seems endless. This is called the Galus Edom, the exile of Edom. Not the Babylonian exile, that was a short night. This is a night that just keeps on going and going. How much longer? It still exists to this day. It started in 70 of the Common Era. That's why it's called Galus Edom, the great, great exile. It's called Galus Edom because it was initiated by Rome. Rome are descendants of the arch enemies of Israel, Esau, Edom. Galus Edom. Seeing no end to the exile, the call goes out to the night watchman. That's what we are. We are the night watchman, but it's a long night, is it not? The writer of the book of Hebrews was a night watchman. And he said we were in the last days then. He just went to bed. It's as if to say, what of our long, dark day of exile has now turned into a long, long, dark night of exile. It's like an angel, it's like a malak, a messenger who has guard duty, the watchman of the ages. That's what we are, brethren. We are the watchmen of the, and it seems to be going on for blooming ages. I can't believe how long I have been honored and blessed to be able to teach the Torah. It keeps going on, and you're like, yes, 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 it does. Hurry up, hurry up. I know you keep going on for ages. Teshuvah, teshuvah. If we truly want the day to dawn on our exile, then all we really have to do is ask. And how do we ask for it? Return. O come, Yahweh, come, O Holy One of Israel. By a mass teshuvah movement, we will actually, in effect, be asking for the end of our exile and the beginning of our exodus, and that will be the greater exodus prophesied by Jeremiah, coupled with the collapse of the fall of Babylon the Great. We live in these times. Are you a watchman of the ages? I'm a watchman of the ages. It's a long, restless night. And if you are a watchman of the ages like me, then your answer is yes, there will be exile. But there will be a dawn that will break after this long, long, seemingly endless night. And this will be the morning of the righteous, but it will also be the night of the wicked. It's going to be the night of the wicked. When the morning dawns, the righteous will receive their just reward. You will. You'll have the dew upon the ground, the sweet smell of blossoms, and the wicked, they will suffer their just punishment. And when will this be, you say? When will this be? Whenever you want it to be. It's really up to you. Because the day begins to dawn the moment you make teshuvah. You start to see the dawning in your life. Your life becomes not so dark as it once was. It's not yet daylight, but it's not black the way it was. You're not in the black of the night. Leviticus chapter 26 speaks of the short night, the 70-year exile. Only a small fraction of the Jewish people even returned from that exile. Most wanted to stay. They became so comfortable. Deuteronomy 28, conversely, is the Galus Edom. It's the long exile. And the only way to end that is a mass teshuvah movement. It's a mass movement of us making repentance. All 12 tribes. It's not just the tribe of Judah. It's all 12 tribes. That's why I greet you every single week the way I do. It has to be a mass teshuvah movement of all 12 tribes to bring us into the greater Exodus. Man! Look at verse 13. The burden upon Arabia. In the forest in Arabia shall you lodge, O you traveling companions of the Dadanites. The inhabitants of the land of Tema brought Maim water to him that was thirsty. They met the fugitive with lechem, bread. For they fled from the swords, from the drawn sword and from the bent bow and from the weight of war. You have to slow it down because every single word means something. Even the doors and the hinges are so profound, aren't they, ladies? The descendants of Ishmael, the passage is telling us, will wage 3 wars of destruction in the end of days. One will be maritime and admiralty at sea. As it says, because of the bent bow. One will be like a land dragon, because the beast will come out of admiralty maritime and come upon the land. As it says, because of the drawn sword. And one will be in a large city. Will it be New York, where the stock exchange is? And it will be heavier than the other two, as it says, and because of the weight of war. There will be 3 wars of destruction. One at sea, because it says, because of the bent bow. One on land, as it says, because of the drawn sword. And one in a large city, as it says, because of the weight of the war. Historically, the atrocity was perpetrated by some Arabians against Jewish refugees that were fleeing from Nebuchadnezzar. But prophetically, in the end days, there's going to be 3 destructive wars which the descendants of Ishmael will wage. It's no accident that a large part of Mystery Babylon's supply of oil is actually in the hands of the descendants of the Ishmaelites, the Arabs. He needs purchasers for his oil. And then people, well, they need him so that they can buy it. But what happens if there's a depegging from the US dollar? This is where we are on the prophetic calendar of things. For this has Yahweh said to me, within a year, according to the year of a hired worker. When it happens, it's going to happen. Not 1 minute later. That's what it means. When a hired worker's time is up, his time is up. It's time to go home. Not 1 minute later. When his contract is over, it is up. And when Yahweh says it's up, it's up, it's up at that minute, that very day, that very hour, that very minute. The moment Belshazzar decided to stick his thumb before the Most High and thumb the Most High and say, oh, go and get the vessels from the temple that my grandfather, as a desecration to Yahweh, that was the moment. Not 1 minute later, not a second later, then the handwriting appeared on the handwriting. If you can't see the handwriting on the wall, brethren, if you can't see it, then you are a watchman that is asleep. And the residue of the number of archers, the mighty men of the children of Kedar, shall be diminished. For Yahweh Elohim, the Elohim of Israel, has spoken it, and it shall come to pass, because Yahweh's word is alive. It is alive. More alive than you and me. David knew it. He knew it. He once said, in regards to the Arabs, in Psalm 120, we're finished, in verse 5, "Oh, woe is me, that I live in Meshach, that I dwell in the tents of Kedar. My soul has long dwelt with a hater of peace." When I'm for peace, they are for war. Is that where we live right now? All they want to do is argue. All they want to do is stir up a controversy. All they want to do is rope you in to their absolute nonsense. Their identity politics. All of their absolute nonsense as they fly the flags of pride and dishonor against the Most High. And all they want you to do is align with that. They are haters of peace. As they speak peace, they are looking for war. David knew it. My soul has long dwelt with a hater of peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Oh, they'll tell you peace, 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 tolerance, tolerance, tolerance. But the moment you speak the word of Yahweh, they are at war with you. They hate you. They hate you because you testify to the very stench of death that comes out of them. Be a watchman that is awake. Be a watchman that is bold. Be courageous, for we are living in the days of the prophets. We are the long night watchmen. That's the clarion call of Isaiah chapter 21. And Yahweh's word, brethren, it is fire. And we bring the fire. You bring the fire to your community. You bring the fire wherever you are, and you stand and you be that watchman out there on the walls. And remember, this long night is coming to a close, and we shall wait and walk upon the dew as the enemies shall walk upon burning coals and be turned to ashes underneath our feet. Shabbat Shalom.